And we are live. Welcome back, everybody, to Beyond the ToolBelt episode 225. We have another amazing guest this week. Stay tuned, and we will be back after a short intro from our sponsors.
TC Backer. Roofing, siding, windows, gutter, solar. Roofing, siding, windows, gutter, solar. TC Backer.
Is your lead flow down? Whether you're a company owner, office staff, salesperson, or installer, you're a roofing rock star. We help you get more leads with custom SEO, Google Ads, and a pro website.
TC Backer.
Awesome. Happy Wednesday, everybody, and thank you for joining us on your lunch break. We have currently changed to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time from our previous time at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And this is our 225th consecutive episode. We have not missed one live episode since we've started this 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago. And today, my good friend Ronnie, probably one of the most humblest people I know in the industry today. He's a father, he's a leader, he's a coach, pillar within his community, gives back just like we do, is cut from the same cloth. I feel like our core values align a good bit. And now that I see you're getting involved with this Roof Warrior sales training and probably all kinds of other stuff that I didn't touch on, but I guess we'll find out what that stuff might be. And here he is, my friend Ronnie. How are you, buddy?
Man, Ty, I'm doing great. Having a great day. And, pumped to be here.
Yeah, man, no doubt. I know we're pumped to finally have you here. I know a couple times that we kind of misconnected. Earlier, I was telling you about the headspace that I was in out there at Salt Lake, where we lost our equipment and had been on the road for a while. And I was trying to quit smoking cigarettes, which finally I did. Probably a year or so later, I finally got off the cigs. And I do hit a vape occasionally, but nothing like I did with cigarettes. I was up to 3 packs back then. And
man.
I was going through.
Well, congrats to not the habit. That's got to be crazy difficult to do.
Oh yeah, it wasn't. It was probably one of the most difficult things I ever had to do. I've quit a lot of things, a lot of bad things, a lot of bad habits in my lifetime, and cigarettes was definitely the one. I mean, I've quit drinking, I've quit all kinds of other things over the years, and cigarettes was definitely the one vice that I couldn't do it. I couldn't kick it, man. It was just, I guess I didn't suffer from any consequences. health wise. I mean, the consequences I did suffer with, bad breath, stained teeth, smelled like an ashtray, which was probably the thing that annoyed me the most, especially if I was going to meet people or if I needed to go someplace, and if somebody asked if they wanted to drive with me or not, or ride with me. I smoked in my vehicle. You know what I mean? And it just was so uncomfortable. And I didn't, I felt like I was hiding. I had to hide smoked cigarettes. And it has become like this taboo thing that it's just not cool to smoke cigs like it was back in the days when I started smoking cigarettes.
Right.
But anyhow, we finally got you on the show. Here you are. And, everything happens for a reason, I think. I think there's a reason that we misconnected, early on when we first met each other. And I feel like there's a reason why, maybe somebody's listening that needs to hear your message today or whatever that might be, you know what I mean? But I do believe the universe works in mysterious ways, and I choose not to try to figure that out or judge it in any way, shape, or form. But why don't we start out by you telling us, where you're at now in your journey of things, or maybe go back a little bit. Tell us what it was like, how you got here, and like what it's like now, I guess. In a nutshell.
Yeah. So actually, I was born in New Jersey, so a little bit closer to your neck of the woods than Texas is.
Yeah, for sure.
So lived there until I was about 13. And that's actually how I got into my first sales gig was working selling newspaper subscriptions to adults door to door. So that was my first door knocking gig was selling newspaper subscriptions.
Nice.
So yeah, that was a lot of fun. I think about it now. I remember a guy driving up and approaching me as I'm riding my bike through the neighborhood and being like, "Hey, you wanna make some money?" And so it was an interesting conversation, because if I saw that guy doing that to my kid now, I'd kind of freak out, right? Kind of a different world back in those days. But that was my first opportunity to get into door knocking. He told me I had the opportunity to make money and win some competitions. So my very first opportunity to compete selling was to earn a boombox CD player. So thankfully I won that competition, and that was kind of my getting kicked off in my sales career. But lived in Tennessee, and then Texas and Colorado. But now married, beautiful wife of 18 plus years, and actually enjoy being married. Not just like love her, but actually like her and enjoy spending time with her, which is fantastic. 3 boys as well. So I've got a 16-year-old, a 13-year-old, and about to be a 11-year-old. So it's been quite the journey. So sold all kinds of stuff over the years. I've been in the fitness business, insurance, irrigation, landscaping, lawn. So like six different industries, knocking doors over the years. It's been really cool. Me over the years, and so I really enjoy having the opportunity to be able to give back and really be able to be a blessing to other people at this point in time in my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, you said a lot of cool things there. To as far as your journey through through sales and geographical changes and things like that. But the one thing that really stood out to me is that your wife is your best friend. And how important that is for success on any level, right? Success at home, success at work, the motivation, what drives you, your why, all of those things, having somebody in your corner that you can go home to or work with, or I'm not sure how that dynamic worked or works today. But I know, Jana and I, is my best friend. We say that all the time. Like, I still like you.
Right.
And it's kind of like an inside, in the house joke kind of thing where it's like, because there's a difference between, loving or in love or liking, right? Like I still like my significant other. She's still my best friend. Like we have a slumber party every night, and that's kind of how we look at it. And we giggle and laugh, and we still act crazy. It's, we've been together now, I think coming on 14 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you know, and she's really been my rock for a lot of different things, you know, like everything. And I've gotten better. She's not in the business, working in the business anymore like she used to. She's kind of on lockdown, you know, got the household on lockdown. She's a, you know, kind of like a stay-at-home grandmother instead of a stay-at-home mother, like she had became. But my oldest son, Jacob, had two babies like back to back. I think they call them Irish twins.
Yeah,
And Jacob at that time worked for us, and so we decided, you know, maybe it would be better if she just stayed home with the kids for them. And then, you know, Mackenzie, our second oldest, she had a baby 3 years ago, probably coming up on 4 already. Skylar, our youngest grandchild, and so she, you know, participates with Mackenzie and Skylar on a regular basis, and Joel and Quinn are two other our oldest grandbabies, and you know, but she's there. You know, I try not to. Well, I guess where I was going to go with that is that I try not to take this home now. You know, because we're at the office right now, which is kind of convenient. We kind of build out a little room here at the office. We call it our Smash Lab. And then we have a studio down at our old shop that we haven't been in for a while, but I think we're getting ready to remodel that and make that more guest friendly. Like, so maybe next time when you come on the show, you can fly up here.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
And visit the studio and stuff like that. But anyhow, I guess my point is like I try not to take this crap home, and that way, because that's my peaceful place. That way she can remain with a non-biased opinion on things if I got to bounce something off of her or by her. And plus, I don't want to bring her down. And plus, we tend to stir each other's pots. So if I share something with her, like, can you believe this mofo did this to me?
Sure.
No way, get out. So like we stir each other's pots, you know,
Right.
too. So, but again, she's my best friend. So that stood out because that's big. That's huge, right? Because what do they say? It's like there's never any like business problems. It's a people problem, right? It's stuff
100%.
outside of work that people bring to work. It's not necessarily a work related issue. So it's
yeah. I think that a lot of times, you know, in our industry, we got a lot of really awesome, driven people that are very successful, that are even helping other people. But a lot of times we at the expense of those opportunities can sacrifice our family life. And we don't pay attention to our home life. And then, you know, 15 years down the line, you know, you're out of the house. Maybe the kids aren't out of the house. You're super successful. You might, you know, speak on podcasts. You might be on stage. You might have a very successful business. But at the end of the day, when you come home, that person might not be there any long. Neglected that part of your life until time. I think the same about your health, wellness, as well, where you're able to be a driven person and be going and working 80-hour work weeks. But if you don't pay attention to that temple, we only get one of those, right? And so at the end of the day, back on my life, I wish I would have worked more hours. Right? Nobody says that on their deathbed. They say, hey, I wish I would have more time with my family. I wish I would have been able to do X thing, right? It's never a business creation or an idea when it comes down to that. So I think that, you know, we've got to be able to, you know, compartmentalize is probably not the right term here, but whenever you think about it, whatever happens at your home life is going to impact your business life and personal and professional both ways, right? You're not going to really be able to separate those things. So if you're really struggling at one, you're going to struggle at the other. And so I think that if you want to be a whole person, which is ultimately what I'm really wanting to be, I think that I'm going to make sure that I pay attention to all those different things as much as possible.
Yeah, that's so good, man. That's so good because a lot of good stuff there. Because you know we joke about it, but out of all seriousness, so my oldest son, Jacob, he's 30 now, and you know, I was young. You know, I wasn't around. I was out running and gunning and things like that, and I had the opportunity. He stayed most of his childhood with his mom until I figured out what it was I wanted to be when I grew up. And then when he turned 17, I had the opportunity. By that time, I had gotten my stuff together enough. I was an entrepreneur. I had my own house, things like that. And I had the opportunity to bring him in and try to, mentor him and father him and, nurture him and stuff like that. But he was already on his own trajectory. You know what I mean? Kind of actually like filled in my footsteps where I had left off. He kind of picked up from there, which wasn't good while I was trying to, maintain and stay on the course that I was on. And so we butted heads a lot. And, but looking back, I worked a lot of hours and I could have I feel like I could have did a lot better job. And then our second rocket, Jen and Mackenzie, I did a little better with that one. You know what I mean? Where my why started to evolve into, more of a family. Like, I guess my train of thinking started to shift from, I thought my why is that I need to work. I need to kill myself so I can provide for my family and continue to have air conditioner in the summer and heat in the winter and food in the refrigerator and a roof over our heads. I thought as long as the kids had brand new shoes, I'm number one dad of the year award. And then Rocket came along and I was still, not being there, I guess. Even when I was there, I still wasn't there, up until, several years ago, I started to identify like what being present really meant. By me just being at the sports game, watching basketball on my phone didn't mean I was there. Right. I wasn't present. Even though I was there, I wasn't present. I wasn't where my feet were. And I don't beat myself up over that. I think there was some, I think I needed to do some of that to be who I am today, unfortunately. And my kids love me. I mean, there's nothing wrong with our relationships with my kids today, but I think if anything, so to lead into a story, I had the opportunity, Jana and my wife got to take care of my mom. She was battling her second bout with cancer. And this February had been 9 years since she passed away. And we went out to dinner and of course, Jana was taking care of her all day while I was at work. And then I would come home and I called it second shift. Basically, I just slept with a baby monitor next to my bed. And if she needed something, I'd get down and do it for her. And we went out to dinner one night. And of course, I was probably 2 hours late. And finally got there, picked everybody up as they were sitting around the house waiting for me. And we went out to Longhorn Steakhouse up in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. And my phone rang. It was 7:30. Phone rang. And man, I was whipped. I was beating myself up on a couple different levels here. One, because I felt like I was dropping the ball at work. But the main thing is that I felt like here's my poor dying mom, right? That I haven't seen in 16 hours because I had been at work probably, the phones ring in. They waited for me for 2.5 hours. I'm looking at Jana, who's my rock, taking care of my mom. And she said two things to me when I red buttoned it. For probably the first time in my life I had ever red buttoned anything, because I felt like, God, if I don't answer this phone call right now, we're not going to have enough money to provide for our family. Right. It was just this nonstop financial insecurity, which I don't know why. Right. I had it. I just had it, I guess because I'm not for money and just, I don't know. I just had this real big financial insecurity about everybody else and always put my family to the side. I felt like, but I thought I was doing the right thing. But she said two things to me. She said, and they're not real earth shattering things. And we've heard them all over our lives. And the first thing she said to me is, Ty, you need some help. And boy, she was right, but she didn't know how right she was when she said I needed help. I needed mental help. I needed all kinds of help at this time. But sad thing was there's another part to that. But the other thing she said is that life is too short, Tyrus. And at that point in time, and that's, like I said, not very earth shattering, but it just gave me goosebumps right now when I said that. That was like, wow, because my mom, who killed herself in the bar and restaurant industry, my family has owned a bar. This Christmas was our 41st Christmas that we were open. So I grew up at a bar and a restaurant. And we were open 365 days a year. I literally looking back now, watched her business kill her. Yes, she passed away from cancer, but all of those years of neglecting her body, her health, she was diabetic. Right. Type 2 diabetic. Like, I didn't learn anything from that, by watching her, but that's just how we were raised, Gen Xers and baby boomers. right? That's how we were raised. You work your ass off at a job, the same job, most of them dead end jobs or whatever, to provide for 12 freaking people in the house. Now there wasn't 12 of us, but that's kind of like the picture perfect of, baby boomer lifestyle. And I went on a mission at that point in time, right? Like, so the first part to that is that I needed help. Well, I had help. There was people standing outside my office door every day, just waiting for me to tell them what to do. I had trained them on how to think, not necessarily what to think on their own. Right. And I probably said that backwards, but it was like, I had the help and the culture was great, but that's just how we were all kind of trained, was like, hey, we wait for the boss to tell us what to do every day. Right. And I did everything. I mean, I was the service department. I ran the service department. I would do service, even though I had a service department. I ordered every bit of material, whether it was stock material, because we got our own gutter machines. I ordered all the inventory. I ordered the jobs, the roofing. I called the subcontractor to show up. I scheduled the in-house crews. I was accounts payable, receivable, even though I had receivables and payables. I just had to say, nope, pay this one, don't pay this one. Yep, only pay half of that one, pay the full in this one. I was everything, 15 hats. That eventually actually created 12 50-hour full-time jobs for people. And that was about 9 years ago, 9-ish, 10 years ago, when she said that to me. And I had gone on a mission, and it wasn't an easy mission to go on, to let go. Sure. And not be an Indian giver. I call it an Indian giver, whether that's politically correct or not. But like, I would give somebody something and take it back from them. Right. No, you didn't do it right. You're not doing it fast enough. And like, critique the shit out of it, because I was, I felt like nobody can do it as good as I can. This is my baby. I built this thing. It was pretty selfish way to think, even though I thought, and that's funny. That's the funny thing about selfishness. It's so cunning and baffling. I thought I was so giving and caring, you know what I mean? But really, at the end of the day, I was being really selfish by not delegating these tasks and improving the quality, or giving them empowerment and ownership in helping build this thing. It was like, no, I'm going to build it, and then you're going to do it. What little bit I'm going to give you to do, or whatever. My thinking was just was of old mindset, of the right. Old way mentality of doing things, I guess. It wasn't right. It wasn't wrong. It was just the way that it was done back in those days.
Well, the crazy thing is with that, like you mentioned, nobody could do it better than I could, or that was your thought at the time, right? Was I'm the guy, I know all of the things, and it's going to save me time if I just do it. Because if I have to show you how to do it, then it's going to take time, which in the moment is probably true. But in reality, for long term, it's actually not true, right? Because if you just keep doing that, right? And there's probably some owners right now that are sitting here listening to this, being able to learn from you, and see, like, that's exactly what I'm doing right now. But the reality is, we're not equipping our people if we do that, right? We're shortcutting their opportunity to grow into the next level of leadership and person that they're going to become. And we're also shortcutting ourselves as leaders as well, because we're not kind of that EOS model of delegating and elevating, right? Like, hey, it's that upper left quadrant that you really want to work in. Otherwise, we're kind of doing everybody a disservice when we're not kind of releasing and letting it happen. Because I think one of the most important things that Heath Hicks ever told me was, like, I need you to fail. And I was like, excuse me, I don't like failing at anything. So hard pass, bro. I'm not failing. And he was like, no, I need you to fail. And I need you to let other people fail around you. I was like, this seems like a very bad business decision. Like, I don't think you're thinking through this very well. But the reality was, once I understood what he meant by that, that was one of the most liberating things. And it's actually one of our core values, is to learn, improve, and refuse to quit. Not refuse to fail, refuse to quit, right? And so that's one of our core values at AVCO, is I need you to fail, right? I remember talking to one of our new sales guys just last week, and I was looking at his numbers, and they were kind of so-so numbers for his first, 4 to 6 weeks. And, kind of had a conversation with him, and he was afraid of rejection, right? He was afraid of failure. He was afraid of, had a fear of man, right? There's certain core fears, I think, that we all as individuals have. fear of the unknown. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. And that's a super scary one, because like there's a bajillion different things that could be, the fear of failure, fear of man, like people's opinions and all those things, and trying to figure out what it was that was the crux that was kind of holding him back. And so I remember having a conversation and being like, hey, Josh, I need you to be willing to fail. And he was like, no boss has ever told me like, or given me permission to fail. I need you to fail because it means you're trying. It means you're actually wanting to get better. Now, does that mean that I want you to continue to fail at the same thing every single time? No, I want you to learn from that failure, improve, and then refuse to quit. Your failing is not actual failure. Failing is learning, or it's winning. Those are the two things that failure actually brings about, right? It's not the context that we generally see it as, where failure is a negative thing. It's not a negative thing. It's actually opportunity. It's either I'm going to win this opportunity, or I'm going to learn from this opportunity. It's one or the other. And so I think it's one of those things where, as leaders, you did yourself a service, and you probably feel better than you felt even 9 years ago, even though you're 9 years older. Like, your cortisol levels in your body are probably substantially less than what they used to be. You're probably more pleasant to be around, I would guess. Probably Jana would be a great person to ask if that's true, or Vic would be another good person to ask him whenever it comes down to it. And I think that all of those things kind of bring about freedom at the end of the day, and it equips those people, because then it gives them that platform to know, well, Ty or Ronnie or whoever, they empowered me to do this, and I know that they're going to have my back even if I screw something up, right? Like, I have that conversation with our leadership team all the time. Like, hey, I'm totally fine if a customer calls in and they're really frustrated about X. The reality is, hey, we're going to be able to learn from those opportunities, and we're going to move on, and we're going to get better. So I think that's a great nugget of wisdom to share there.
So good, Ronnie. Oh, so good, man. That was so good. From failure is the experience, right? And that's why I have the experience that I have today is from the failures that I've, have completed or incompleted, failures. And that it never rang so true in my ears listening to you say that. It's not that I really necessarily encourage like, go out and just fail, right?
Sure.
But failure, you have to create a work atmosphere where they're not going to get in trouble if they do fail. Okay. Right. And just, you got to put faith and trust in people that they're going to make the right decision. But you had mentioned core values, and the importance of core values is to allow them to make decisions on their own, as long as it falls within the core values.
Right.
You're not going to make a bad decision.
Right.
You know what I mean? And if there's a little bit of failure in there, that's where your experience grows. That's where you become seasoned. Without the failures, you can't achieve anything. It's like when we used to ride skateboards, right? If you weren't falling, we call it busting. If you weren't busting your ass, if you weren't falling, you weren't skating.
Right.
You had to try and attempt and do things to overcome fear or whatever obstacle was in the way. It's not always going to turn out the way that we thought it was going to turn out, but most of the time it turns out the way that it was supposed to turn out. And that's so good. So good. So what would you say? Okay. Obviously you're in a higher level position today. And what would you say your daily routine is now, or what is your role, right? Like, do you mainly just like work on yourself to become a better leader, or what task do you do today? Because obviously I don't at least think that you're working in the weeds or working on the business today. I feel like you're in it, you're working on it today. So what does that look like on a day to day?
All right. Do you want me to go like to when I wake up, or you mean like when I get to the office? Because some people ask.
I want to. Yes, morning routine,
Okay.
definitely.
All right.
Personal and professional. Okay. Let's go.
Sure. All right, cool. So usually 5 to 5:15, 5:20 wake up time. First thing I do in the morning is I do 5 minutes of gratefulness. So before I get out of bed, I think about 3 people, and I think about something specific that I'm thankful for who they are in my life, or that particular characteristic or trait that they have. And then I actually think about it and I pray for them before I do anything, before I get up and drink water, before I look at my phone, any of that kind of stuff. So I do that for the first 5 minutes. And then later in the day, I love the voice text where you can send on an iPhone, where you can like record your voice and you can send it in a text message. I send multiple of those a day to people just to let them know I was thinking about them, right? So I want to continue to perpetuate that view and output of gratefulness and thankfulness. So I start there, and then I drink about 16 to 20 ounces of water, like first thing in the morning. And then thankfully, I have a fully functioning gym at the house. So I have a detached oversized two-car garage that my gym equipment's out there, so I don't wake up the family being loud or noisy. So I throw on some shorts, and I usually go out to the gym for the next hour to hour and a half, depending on like what I'm training for at the moment. And during that time, I'm usually listening to a podcast, usually listening to maybe the audio Bible or a mixture of things, Audible, anything along those lines. And then I do, depending on the time of year, I'll do a cold plunge in the morning. So I have a cold plunge out in the back on our back patio. I actually made mine because I didn't want to spend the $6,000 on the plunge version of that. But it works. It functions really, really well. So that was a lot of fun. So I do either cold plunging or I do a cold shower, depending on the time of the year that it is. And then from there, my first hour, like I'm a very very disciplined, scheduled type of person. I'm very methodical. I pretty much do the same things every single day. I mean, my calendar's maybe boring's not the right term, but it's just consistent. So 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock when I first get to the office, it just says connection. So my first hour, I don't allow any meetings to be in that first hour of my day. I go and I connect with everybody in the company throughout the office space. And so my first hour is just connecting with every single person. And I've done that for the last like 7 years, something like that. Like every single day, that's what I do. And that first hour is dedicated to connecting with people. Because at the end of the day, like we might have a roofing company, but we're actually in the people business. Like that's actually what we do. We just happen to put shingles and low slope application and repairs and gutters on people's houses, right? Like the reality is the exchange rate that we actually are transacting is relationship, right? And how do you create relationship? Time spent equals relationship. So if I don't spend that time with those people, I don't get to know them. So therefore, whenever things are going on that are in their life that are hard, I wouldn't know that because I have no connection point. I only have that relationship as a end product of what they're going to give me and how profitable or how much money are they going to save the business. I look at it kind of different. So that hour, that's like a non-negotiable for me. Anybody that's ever worked for me knows that. They know that that's how I do it every single day. And then from there, yeah, you're right. I'm not really in the weeds of the business. Thankfully, have a lot of really fantastic people that work for us, that are department heads and our leadership team, that they're really more the ones that are running the business. Like we have a director of sales. His name's Matthew, and he's fantastic at his job, and he oversees all the sales managers, which oversee all the salespeople. And then we've got, Alex that oversees our productions, and Bruce oversees our operations and insurance and supplementing team. And Emerald's my executive assistant, but she does a million other things than just that, and helps out on the marketing side. We got a marketing team, so on and so forth. So we have a lot of really great people that it's been cool to see them from when we hired them on. And I might have been the person that interviewed them for when they first hired on for pretty much all of those people I just listed. And seeing their progress and their growth has been so cool over the years to just see them grow into the roles. And most of them have been promoted, if at least once, if not multiple times at this point in time in their career. But it's been so cool to see other aspects of their life growing. And so seeing people, sharing my going to a mental health therapist for the first time ever, a year ago or whatever it was, and sharing my story and sharing and being vulnerable with them, and seeing that a lot of them have come to me and be like, hey, I actually, now that you talked about this openly, like I've actually been seeing a therapist and it's been helping me a ton. And so being vulnerable, I think, is another one. And then from there, yeah, we're kind of based off of EOS platform. So we have weekly L10s, and then every department has a L10 meeting. So our leadership team, which is myself and 4 other people that make that up, and we meet for 90 minutes to go over the health of the business. And then from there, every single department has one of those. And honestly, from there, it's now it's me just pouring into people and building relationships. How can I help them become better? And then a couple other things. About two times a week, I have a scheduled 60 to 90 minute block that is just like vision planning, to where I just try to just sit in my office by myself, close doors, which I don't normally keep my door closed unless I'm having a closed door meeting. I pretty much keep my door open all the time. But that's one that's kind of like sacred for me, is I want to think outside of the box. Like, what are things that we could do differently marketing wise? What are things we could do for incentivizing our people? Or like, how could we get our name out in the community more often? Like, what other kind of events could we be doing? How do we get, the people's families involved? All these different things. And so that's kind of quickly what I do. And then after that, come home. Every one of the boys has a daddy day or a daddy night every single night. And so Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, each kid has a evening with me that they get dedicated one-on-one time. So instead of just like spending time only together as a family, they get dedicated time with me, to where we'll go play pickleball or tennis, or go to the batting cages, or watch a movie, or play video games, or play board games, whatever they want to do, whatever that time looks like for them. I do that with them. And so, and then of course I do at least one designated date night a week with my wife as well, where it's just going to be me and her, which, as you know, being a dad, it was really difficult early on in our marriage because we were pretty broke, if I'm going to be honest. And, like, it was really difficult to afford going out and affording a babysitter. That was kind of not in the cards early on in our marriage. And so trying to be creative with that kind of stuff, whether we did, where we would do a picnic and we would take food, or we would, not do a sitter and just, do a designated time in our room only, or hiring the sitter and then only staying in our room because we couldn't afford to go places, right? Whatever it was, but being creative so that way we had that connection time. My wife's love language, one of them is, they say it's quality time. Hers is quality quantity time. Like, that's actually, as many times as she can spend with me is what her preference is. And so that's kind of a quick nutshell of kind of what the day looks like. And then usually in the evenings, I also like to run. So I'll usually go on a run about 5 days a week right now. So.
Gotcha. Now, would you say, are you putting in, well, actually, let me go back a little bit here. How long, I mean, in your career over the years, like, did this routine happen a year ago, like 5 years ago? Like, how long did it take you to finally graduate to know like what your role is within the company?
Yeah, so that's something I'm constantly evaluating. Like, is there an area of the business that I should interject myself a little bit more into, right? Like, should I pay, like right now, I was kind of having that vision planning session last week, and I was thinking, I actually am kind of excited. I want to kind of jump into marketing, and I want to put some of my thoughts and efforts, things that I've been learning, between mastermind groups or just other people that I interact with, that I want to like put my concerted effort behind marketing. And I want to help the marketing person with some ideas and stuff. So I know for moving forward, like, that's going to be that. Now, my morning routine for like parts of that have just kind of been added over the years. Like the gratefulness one, I've been doing that for like the last 2 or 3 years, which has helped me wake up in a better mood, because I don't look at my phone, like, other than just putting my podcast on, or audio Bible or something like that. Like, I don't check my emails like till after 9 o'clock, and honestly I don't even generally check them then. And so different parts of that has kind of grown over the years and kind of adapted. And then just trying to figure out what is it that I enjoy, that I want to do, and what is it that I'm actually gifted in, that I could actually help somebody else in the business so they can be successful. Like, I love sales. Like, I'm a diehard salesperson. I know operations just because I kind of had to, but like I'm a diehard salesperson. I love selling stuff. Like personally, I've even went door knocking this year because we've had some good storms and sold stuff after I left the office just because I love selling stuff. So I've sold quite a bit this year just for kind of kicks and giggles at this point in time. But I know that I have a great person that I can trust in Matthew to be able to lead that. And I'm not worried about it. I just want to support him in whatever ways that I possibly can that's going to help him better and help him to be able to win and grow and get more successful for himself. Because they all have dreams when it comes down to it, right? So like all of our people, like we're not the only people that are visionaries. If you're an owner and you're happen to be a visionary, right? Like we're not the only people that have that. Like everybody has hopes, plans, dreams, promise for a future. And so finding out what that is for those people, and hey, is there a way that I can help support them in that aspect of their life or those areas of their life? Like maybe I can be able to do that. Maybe I can be a blessing to them and be able to give them something that, you know, that I've learned over the years, you know, kind of gleaning some kind of wisdom. Doesn't mean that I'm the smartest guy around, but I've definitely made my fair share of mistakes. And in doing so, hopefully they can learn from my mistakes and not be able to replicate those on their own. Right.
For sure. For sure. What style of leadership do you think you have, and what techniques do you use or follow?
So I mean, I guess it depends on what book we're talking about here at the moment. But I'm a little bit more from the front kind of leader. I like leading by example. I like showing and then letting them, you know, try to do things and kind of mirroring it for them, and then let them mirror it kind of back to me to see if they're kind of understanding. But yeah, I'm more of a by example and from the front kind of leader. I'm usually a pretty talkative person, as you probably can tell. But for me, I'm a big supporter. Like my coaching style for my people is like, I've never yelled at anybody. Like even in firing people, even if it was a terrible situation, like I've never yelled at anybody ever at the office, never cussed anybody else out at the office ever. It just never happened. That's not how I like to receive feedback. And I don't know that that's really received all that well, especially with the younger generations nowadays, right? Like I grew up, you know, like I wanted like my football coach, I was expecting them to yell at me, or wrestling coach or soccer coach, right? Like that was kind of the thing, was like, you're going to be yelled at, and then you're going to be cussed at, and then you're going to have to, you know, do some kind of physical activity to pay for whatever you did wrong. But the reality is like, I want to make sure I understand where they're coming from, and coach them through that. And if it's not the right fit, then it's not the right fit. And so at that point in time, it's time to move on. And so I just want to make sure that people have that opportunity for that correction. And if they don't want to do it, then it's kind of that core value thing that we alluded to earlier. It's kind of the hiring and firing based off of core values. Because unfortunately, like we have had some, you know, turnover over the years, and some of it is because honestly, like we didn't really hire and keep people based off of core values. It was more like what's their capacity and what's their capabilities, and it wasn't culture, right? It's kind of those 3 C's of like, you know, like they have high capacity, okay, but they're also an absolute dick to people, so that's probably not going to end up being well over the time, right? Or you know, their capabilities, they're a fantastic salesperson, but they ruffle everybody else's feathers and they're kind of a cancer. Like nowadays I can say, looking at the company as a whole, we don't have those people, and going to work is so much more fun. Now, not to say that some of that stuff wasn't my fault, because my leadership wasn't what it should have been at that time, and I didn't evaluate through culture and through that lens. But now, like I look forward to really going to work. Like it's enjoyable, it's exciting, and that's what gets me excited about going to work is the people, right? Like I actually don't really care about shingles all that much, to be honest. I mean, I've been in the industry for 17 years, so I know all of the things that we need to know, but I don't get geeked out about like putting you know, TPO on a business. Like I get geeked out that like, hey, this is putting food on somebody else's table and they have 3 kids, or this is, you know, putting a roof on over somebody else's home that, you know, is there more than likely their number one asset. And we want to be able to provide, you know, an amazing experience that they want to tell everybody else about that amazing experience. And we want to be a blessing to them. And so I think about it a lot more in that kind of a context than like we're a roofing company. No, we're actually a people company is what we actually do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. A lot of good stuff in there that you touched on so many different things between core values, leading by example, and leading from the front. And like you said, which book am I reading this week? Right. You know what I mean? Where am I being influenced? How am I being influenced? And it's funny you said that because, I want to ask you a couple of questions about, who is what organization or who has influenced you. But before I get to that, I just recently joined up with AVCO. He's doing this cult culture movement thing. He'd asked me if I would sit in and be a guest speaker on that. And then he asked me if I would, keep coming back. And I was like, of course. And one of the criteria is to read a book. So I was way behind. So I had to catch up quick, and we read Jocko's strategic, what is it? Leadership, strategic, and shit.
Yeah, I haven't read that one yet, but I know which one you're talking about.
It's good. It's good. So I hurried up and blazed through that real quick, but there was so many good nuggets in that. But then now we're reading, Buy Back Your Time. Can't think of the Matt Martell, I think is his last name, Martell. Such a good book. It's my second time actually going through it. And I'm glad I did, because again, this is another one that they talk about the 10-80-10 rule. Okay. A lot of us heard of the 20-80 rule and stuff like that. And this isn't really like that, but this is the 10-80-10. And recently I got to experience this where, like I would start something, right? And then hand it off, let them do 80% of it. And then I would come back in and complete like just put my little final touches on it or approve it or something like that. And I thought, and what's cool about reading books and stuff like that, sometimes it solidifies, okay, yeah, so I have been doing it good, the right way. But then other times it kind of like opens my eyes like, hey, I just did something like that, but I couldn't articulate what it was that I was doing or identified, what it was that I was doing. So now I can actually put a name to it. Like it's the 10-80-10 rule. You know what I mean? That like, it's my job today to like, if I see there's a deficiency someplace, but I know I can't get in the weeds, and it hasn't come apparent to anybody else that we need to do this, whether it's adding a column into the KPI, flow chart or whatever the case might be. In this instance, it was actually a KPI flow chart. We created this KPI flow chart that's actually on one dashboard. We have KPIs, but you got to go 4 different places to look at.
Sure.
Right. So I went into Apple Numbers, created this flow chart in there now and handed it off to Tam. And she nerded out with Google. It's kind of like Excel, but she nerded because she's a master spreadsheeter. Not that I couldn't have did it, but it would have taken me 3 months. That's taken her 3 days to abstract all this data from these 4 locations and put it in there. And of course, I check in on her and say, hey, how you doing? And she's like, what do you think of this? And what do you think of that? So there's a couple things going on here. There's empowerment, right? Yeah. We've empowered her. She's got ownership in it. She's actually building this thing. I just planted the seed, and every now and then I just got to go back in there and water that thing. You know what I mean? And make sure that it blossoms and flourishes. And what I learned from the Jocko book, both books I read, Extreme Ownership and Strategic Tactics and Training, or it's called something like that. But was, taking extreme ownership, right? Like they get all the credit. And it's cool, even though I planted the seed, somehow they feel like this was their idea because it was their idea to add all of these columns. It was their idea to put headers and what color the headers would mean and the graphs that she's using and all this stuff that she's doing. Like this is her baby now. It really is. I had a moment one night. I came back from I came back from one of our locations down in Greenville, and I came back and it's like, we got 4 locations now, and it's easy for me to call upstairs to get a report. But what if Mike needs a report?
Right.
Down in Bluffton. And it's like, we need a platform where it's just one dashboard that he can review, if it has to do with sales, he can follow all the KPIs and follow up with his team, and it's accountability, and it helps us reach our goals each month, each quarter, annually, all of those things. And it's all right there. And it's certain, a lot of it's just questions and accountability things that you put in place. And as we grow as individuals, at least for me, like, I don't need to take the credit for all of this stuff anymore. I don't really care. But the catch 22 is that if this fails, guess who's taking the blame?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's a fine line of like, okay, when do I jump in? When don't I jump in? Do I let them fail, and how bad do I let them fail? You know what I mean? Kind of like you were talking about earlier, because it sounds super easy until you're actually in it and you've watched them make a $2.5 million mistake. And then it's like, how do you respond to that? What did you guys learn from that? I'm supposed to act all happy, joyous, and free and ask the question, okay, guys, so what did we learn from this?
Right.
You know what I mean? So I agree. Yes, there are times we have to lead from the front, but there's also times that we have to lead from behind. And you definitely do this, especially if you're allowing them to make mistakes.
Right.
You know what I mean? If we're not allowing them, we're not leading from behind. We're the one that likes to talk all the time. We're the ones that hold the meetings hostage. I don't know the last time I actually ran the meeting. You know what I mean? We might be holding meetings that I called for, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm running and holding the meeting hostage anymore. And the coolest thing about being in the positions that we're in today is I don't have to make all the decisions anymore.
Yeah.
God, what a weight that is being lifted, that I let the fear, the ego, the anxiety of all that, just, you know what, guys, we're in this together. We're all working just as hard as one another to keep a roof over our heads, and not just our heads, but those that come here and ask us for our services. We also have the opportunity to put a roof over their head.
Right.
Is the cool thing about the journey that I've on thus far. And it sounds like you're on the same journey that I'm on. And, so getting into the organization or who influenced, was it Gino Wickman? Was it who really do you think that you model most of your stuff from? Because I know you probably read a lot of books and you take what you need and you leave the rest. And I think we probably only remember 10% of the whole thing anyhow, but like, who has been like that galvanizer for you?
Yeah, so I think that a couple things, or a couple people, like my grandfather, my paternal grandfather, on my paternal grandfather, so my dad's dad, he probably had single-handedly probably the most impact on me. He grew up, kind of the tail end of the Great Depression, and he was kicked out of the house by the time he was 12 years old, and was told he's old enough to take care of himself, and they've got to provide for his younger siblings. And so, like, he was on his own pretty early on. He started smoking when he was 11 because of that. So, but yeah, he was just a super hard worker, but also a very caring person, and he loved his wife. And I always saw how he loved my grandmother, and that was an example that I'll never forget, because I was like, okay, this is something that's different than a lot of other people I see interacting, especially even like by the time I was old enough to remember. I mean, they had already been married for 40 plus years, 50 plus years at that point in time. And that for me was such a key thing to see. You could tell he didn't just love her, he liked her as well. And he wanted to be around her as much as he possibly could and enjoy her company. And so he was a big time influence. I learned kind of part of my work ethic from him and from my dad. But my organization and calendar management and all that stuff, he was that way. A job wasn't done till the tools were clean and they were put up. And so I grew up, actually, I'm third generation contractor. My dad's a master plumber, master electrician. So I grew up, as a grunt laborer. I was sweating copper by the time I was 13 years old, and all that kind of stuff. And so my grandfather for sure made a huge impact in my life early on. A couple other guys that I really, one of my buddies, his name is Jason Kingery. He lives in Denver, and just seeing how he's conducted business over the years. He's a real estate broker who decided to also get into roofing now. But he's another great example of being wildly successful in business, but also being wildly successful at home. And so I really try to look at those two things, because there's a lot of really successful people in one or the other. And honestly, like, it's really hard to probably see. A lot of people want to be private, and I get that. But I would think that if we looked at the totality of the people that were super successful professionally and at home, I think that number's a lot less than we might think. And so for me, those are two people that really kind of stand out to me. And then from there, I kind of pull things from different individuals. Like, I read the book Atomic Habits pretty much at least once a year. That's one of my all-time favorite books to read. I read Extreme Ownership by Jocko. Probably, about the same, about once a year, every 18 months. Currently reading The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F, since we're live on the feed here. And so I'm currently reading that one. And then another book that I'm going to probably butcher the title, but I think it's something along the lines of the skill of learning how to change your mind. And so I'm reading that one as well, because for me, I like to work on my mindset pretty regularly. And I think that your mindset kind of dictates a lot of things in your life. If you think that you're a winner and you start to, it's kind of that, I'm a big sports fan myself, and you hear about all the greats talking about, envisioning themselves, throwing that, final touchdown in fourth quarter in the Super Bowl, and all those kind of things, and the talk that they have, or, watching, the Bulls, Michael Jordan documentary, where he talks about, like, he even made up stuff to, like, make it in his mind that he was going to be great because, this person said this about them. But the reality is, like, your mindset really builds a lot of those additional things of who you are. And so I'm kind of constantly always working on that, and being mindful of, like, what is it that I can do, how can I grow, and how can I help other people when it comes down to how to develop their mindset. Because I think there's a lot of things there that are generally the holdup, and is kind of that, like, that last lever. If you just kind of turn that lever just a little bit, that it actually frees that up, because you've been putting so much time and effort in all these other areas, but you got this one little thing that's just kind of the key that needs to be unlocked. And if we can change that, you never know what might happen from there.
Love it. I love it. So continuous education, sharpening your skills, expanding your mind, all that stuff. I love it. I mean, I think that's what's going to get us where we want to go, and the moment that we stop learning and stop growing and stop pushing our minds to expand, I think that's when, our team or those people that we're trying to influence us actually start to outgrow us.
Agreed. 100%.
Yeah. And I don't know if you've ever kind of, like, sensed that experience where it's like, oh man, I need to, that maybe I'm just a little more insecure than most people, but it's like, I got to try to stay one step ahead here a little bit, so I can continue to pour into my team. And I think that's why I stick around as long as I do, is because I feel like there's still so much more that I have to pour into my team, where I just feel like, that I want to inspire other people, because I like what you really said earlier about, helping someone. Like, let me ask you, like, where do you want to be in life? Like, what can we do to help you get there? Through my experiences and stuff like that. I mean, that's so good. And I knew, like I said early on, it's like, I knew that our core values personally and professionally would definitely align well earlier, when I introduced you, and how humble you are, because, not one time did you say, we got this behemoth of a thing. You were more like your people. And the other cool thing, Ronnie, that you said was, it wasn't an author. It wasn't, a speaker or a coach or a mentor, opposed to, your grandfather. Like you said, family members. Like, not only did my grandfather, was he organized, not only was he a hard worker, but he liked my grandmother. He was still in love, and how he treated her. Right. What great mentorship, especially from another family member. And for you to say that, because I asked that question a good bit, and everyone goes right away to, like, Jocko, Simon Sinek, boom, 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 boom. They go, and even I'm guilty of that too. And and it's funny because we're going to start an award this year. It's called the Horace Cockshaw Backer Award, and Horace Cockshaw was my great grandfather. And I want to create this golden horseshoe, but very significant. Like, I don't want a cheap piece of crap. Like, I literally want like a gold plated horseshoe to represent my grandfather, because my grandfather was hardworking, and so is my dad. My dad's one of my heroes. I think he's one of the smartest people I've ever known, and has always been a greatest coach, mentor, advocate of what it is that we do. We're a first generation roofing contractor, but I am from a long line of carpenters. And my grandfather just drilled it into my dad, and I've had to hear this my entire life: was a job worth doing is worth doing right. A job worth doing is worth doing right. And we added on to it the first time, has been our motto since day one.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be the job worth doing right the first time award, or the Horace Cockshaw Award, or something like that. And it's going to be like a Stanley Cup, where each a location gets to hold on to it for the year, but it's going to be the highest award, awarded to a location. And I just thought that would be some kind of way, because it really has meaning. I mean, that's, to me anyhow. Hopefully everyone else shares that same sentiment.
Sure.
Sentimental value in that as I do. And I'm sure we got such a great culture, and I know that's going to mean so much to that particular location. And then we'll have other awards, and we're going to do a peer award too. Because most of our awards go towards sales. So a lot of people that work in marketing isn't necessarily going to get an award for. And then with the KPI system that I was telling you about, so we're going to grade it on a curve. So then, even though we've been more seasoned and have branded ourselves more predominantly in York than we have any of our other locations, can't use that against us and say, well, you guys have been in business since, 2000, whatever, up in PA, and our numbers can match. Well, if it's based on percentages along with the KPIs, then any location can win, the next 3 awards. But we also want to have a peer award, and the peer award will go out to somebody that follows the core values, right? Mm. And I don't know if we want to do that quarterly or annually, or how we're gonna give that award out, but I'm looking forward to it. And like you were talking about earlier, those the things when I lock myself in my office, and it's usually on a Saturday or Sundays where I really get those creative, quality changing ideas that make right. The quality of the company, the quality of it, the quality of the people just better, to really solidify and galvanize the culture that we're really trying to grow here, and awards and things like that, things that we can all collaborate in and work towards. And plus it creates a healthy competitiveness, atmosphere too, that you don't have to, but it's good to have in a sales atmosphere, or sales job is to have that healthy competition that people can work towards, work for, that stuff. So but anyhow, I feel like I could keep talking to you for a whole nother hour. We're about an hour and 2 minutes into this. But before we get off here, I know you dropped golden goose eggs all over this podcast that people can take away from this and use and apply in their life today. But is there one last thing that you just want to leave everybody that might be listening now, live or on the playback, that you just want to leave with them that has really helped you along over the years?
Yeah, I think that, kind of continuing that conversation of always being a lifelong learner is also being teachable, because they're not necessarily, they're kind of synonymous in some ways, but really teachability comes down to, I can learn from anybody. I learn from my kids all the time. They'll say something, and I'll be like, wow, that's something I could definitely apply in my life. And being teachable, I think, is a characteristic that is kind of wildly overlooked nowadays, because, like I said, we can learn from anybody. Just because we have years experience in doing whatever we're doing doesn't mean that we can't learn from somebody else that's just getting into the industry. And so I try to take that and apply that in my professional life as well as my personal life, because at the end of the day, I never thought I would have to apologize to my children as much as I have over the years. But for me, it's one of those things that, I heard a quote the other day that I thought was really impactful. And we kind of started with kind of personal stuff, and I'm going to kind of end with personal stuff. And it's the reality is that I get to parent my second and third kids because I learned as I grew as a parent with my first child, right? And I have to tell him all that all the time, like, you're kind of the guinea pig, kind of, joking, but the reality is, like, I'm learning and I'm growing just at the same time as they are. And making sure you're making space for that in your relationships with your kids, I think is really, really vital. Like I said, I've had to apologize a lot for doing things the wrong way, or being too harsh, or not choosing the right thing, or whatever the thing is. But making sure that always trying to have that relationship, because at the end of the day, I only have them for a certain amount of time, right? And like with my 16-year-old, like I have him a lot less time now than I can even imagine right now. And my goal is, that hopefully he'll want to continue to have a relationship with me outside of, our home once he moves out and has his own thing, and realizes, like, hey, yeah, my parents are here for my betterment, and that ultimately they want me to succeed, because, there's plenty of a-holes in the world. Like, we don't need to create any more of those. Like, my goal is to hopefully create young men that are going to be a cultural add to society. They're going to love people, that are going to put other people first, that will be selfless, and that will be caring, generous, kind individuals that'll be able to make an impact into the world.
Oh man, I love that. I love that so much. Can be a continuous learner, be a how do they say it? Be a steward of leadership. Dude, I love that, especially with the kids. And I've learned so much from my kids as well too. And saying that, I personally learned a lot from this today. And I'm sure other people have gotten a lot from this too. And just the way that, it's probably things I've heard before, but the way that you articulated it, Ronnie, I think that, you've done a lot over the years, and you're not like, hey, look at me, look how big my jock is over here. I'm Ronnie, with AVCO Roofing and all that stuff. So man, I appreciate everything that you do. I appreciate everything that you stand for, and the change that you're trying to make in our industry. And this, I like how you said too, like, you're in the people business. Right. You're not in the roofing business necessarily. And we used to say, when you said that, we used to say, like, we're no longer, a roofing business that does marketing. We're a marketing business that does roofing. And I kind of feel bad for saying that, because not really, but I mean, because we are that too. But I like how you said that, because we are so much more than a roofing company. We're a people company. Right. We've created a co-leadership, development culture here. Like, everybody under this roof is a leader, and it is our job, and it's your job to create and develop, the people that you work around, and especially your children. And we had the honor and the privilege to take Rocket with us to win the Storm this year, and that's just a small part of us developing him into being the next generation of leaders that are coming up through, right? Like, that's our moral responsibility as good human beings, is to develop, good human beings. So great job, brother. I love what you're doing over there, man. And let's stay in touch.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you're just a great dude, and you're definitely somebody I need in my circle of people that will help level me up and just become a better person in general, man. So thank you for everything you're doing. Thank you, everybody that's tuned in for this amazing episode. If you didn't get to check it out, go back to the beginning and listen to this, because Ronnie just put some really good stuff on the internet right now that anybody, whether you're a parent managing a household, or you're a manager within a business, or you're an entrepreneur, you need to come back and listen to this episode, because Ronnie just put the fire out. So thank you, Ronnie. Thank you for everything that you do. And thank you for everybody that's tuned in this afternoon with us.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Ty. It was an honor. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, brother.